I want to just say how important I think this discussion seriously is. There's kind of two issues in one here, really. Islamism, combating it. Islamism is a cancer. It is a genocidal death cult. It's the biggest threat to our way of life, in my view, that there is, and to the entirety of Western civilization. The problem is, of course, it's here, and we've let it in, haven't we? And I think for too long, too many people have been too afraid of being called Islamophobic to stamp it out. And we need to have a conversation about that, right? Because if we don't sort it out, it will be the end of us. The other issue, of course, at play here is anti-Semitism. Now, yeah, sometimes they go hand in hand. There are other causes, obviously, for anti-Semitism. We've seen an increase in anti-Semitic terrorist attacks. Some people view it as the kind of last, almost acceptable form of racism. I mean, that's certainly how it seems when you look at some of the events that we see take place not far from here every other weekend on the streets. What I will say, I'm not Jewish myself, I'm a proud Roman Catholic. However, I'm aware, very aware, that I view the Jewish community as the canary in the coal mine. And if they are warning us about something, then we should take serious note of that. So, without further dither and delay, I'm going to let my esteemed panel go down here one by one. Rob, I'll start with you, but it turns out actually, Robert and I actually went to the same school and at the same time, but he had a much harder paper round than I did. But no, go on, mate. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, you know, it's wonderful to have somebody from Manchester introducing me, well, more Cheshire, introducing a Mancunian, a Salford boy like me. But I'm Robert Garson, I'm chairman of GS2 Law. I have the privilege of having President Trump as one of my clients. He appointed me to the Holocaust Memorial Council to sit on that. I'm also president of the American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists. I've been living in the United States since 2008, having seen a little bit of the writing on the wall as to what's going on here. And I've been an advocate on issues of Jew hatred, anti-Semitism, and actually trying to promote what might be British values over there in the United States. Passing it over to you.
Absolutely. Yes, go on then, sir.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm Ghanem Nuseibeh. I'm chairman of Muslims Against Anti-Semitism, which is a UK registered charity.
Brilliant.
And I fight, obviously, anti-Semitism, and I expose Islamist extremism whenever I can.
Good for you. Good for you. Amiad?
Amiad Cohen, thank you very much for having me here. Married, 6 kids, that's the important part. For the past decade, I've been running a think tank in Israel called Herut. Herut is liberty in Hebrew, and we promote conservative ideas based on individual liberty and national liberty. Background in business, real estate, technology, security, and others.
Fantastic. Well, what an amazing panel that we've got here. Let's get straight into it. Robert, biggest question then in a way, how do we combat Islamism?
Go to church. One of my... Look, one of the main issues that you've got, in my view, now living in the United States and seeing what's going on in Britain, one of the most wonderful things when I go around the United States and I speak is I go into churches and I speak to people and I see communities that go along the way. Look, as a Jew, as somebody, a Sephardic Jew, a family that's lived in Britain for hundreds of years, I have the benefit that whenever I go around the world, I've got a community. I can walk into synagogue and there are people who are religiously, philosophically, and culturally aligned in the way that I think. And when I look at Britain nowadays, I think to myself, what do the people who aren't Jewish, what do they have? Because when you've got a Church of England that has decided to abrogate nearly every one of its principles, so that the Bible itself has become kind of suggested guidance if you want to live a relatively nice life. And then on the other side of that, there is absolutely no pub culture anymore. In fact, I wanted to set up in Britain, I wanted to set up the PLO, the Pub Liberation Organization, so that people can come back and have some sense of community. And when I say to people, I say, first and foremost, where do you center your charity? Where do you center your community? Who is your community at the moment, and how are you helping each other? When I go to synagogue, I can sit next to somebody, and either I can help that person or that person can help me. And one does that. What Britain needs to do is to start regaining its community, regaining its religion, and then regaining its backbone and its morals along the way. And that's how you combat Islamism, and at the same time, you combat anti-Semitism. The two go hand in hand.
Popular view, I think. Popular view. I should just say on that very, very quickly, you know, your points there about the Church of England, of course, were echoed by the late, great Anne Widdecombe, and I would just like to take a moment to say, obviously, rest in peace, dear Anne, and we wish her family all the very best. She had certainly very, very strong views about the Church of England potentially losing its way there. But anyway, we digress a bit. Ghanem, I'll come to you. I'm very keen for you to talk specifically initially on this view of what a big threat Islamism is. You are a Palestinian born, I believe.
Yes.
Talk to me a bit about that. Talk to me about the experiences there and what we have to learn and how we can fight it.
Well, Islamism is a political movement that was started by the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928 in Egypt to establish a supranational caliphate that does not believe in nation states. It therefore is an organization that wants not only to destroy Western countries, but wants to destroy all 52 Islamic countries, as well as Israel and the UK, and therefore it is against the way of life of civilization, whether it's Western or Eastern or whatever. And it has been very successful at infiltrating Muslim societies in the West, because the West has been literally sleeping. And Muslim countries like the United Arab Emirates, like Jordan, like Egypt, have banned Muslim Brotherhood. The West have welcomed Muslim Brotherhood exiles from those countries into Britain, and now we're having to deal with that threat. And unfortunately, they're ahead of the game. They've come up with this Islamophobia definition as a way to scare people off from speaking out against anti-Semitism. Muslims, we can't speak against them, but the majority of the population have been threatened and bullied into not speaking out against it.
Just to talk to you a bit more about that before we come to Amiad on the end there, because that was finally important. I mean, it reminds me of the case where it turned out shortly after the October 7th attacks that actually a Hamas general had been living in a council house in Brent for a while, and that's just one of them. I mean, the amount of them that we've had over here is unbelievable. Do you think they use our own weakness and sensitivities and politeness against us for their own ends?
Without a doubt. And just to mention, Hamas is the Palestinian branch of Muslim Brotherhood. We banned Hamas, we prescribed Hamas, but we kept the rest of the Muslim Brotherhood organization operate freely in the UK, and they are using British resources, weaknesses, not just British, Western. I'm glad President Trump has prescribed or banned 4 chapters of Muslim Brotherhood in Sudan, Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon, and I hope he'll prescribe the rest. And in Britain, we haven't done anything since Gordon Brown, in fact, banned the spiritual leader of Muslim Brotherhood in 2008, Yusuf Qaradawi, from entering Britain, and good for him. But that was the last good thing that I think we did. Obviously, we prescribed Hamas, but that's not enough.
Look, I'll allow you to say whatever you want, but I thought kind of following on from that in a way, which is another massive area of weakness that we've got, aside from not banning organisations and in some cases allowing them to literally have council houses and benefits here, is also what's been going on in the English Channel recently. That is a big problem. There was a case very recently where a bloke who arrived illegally for the second time, then within days of kissing British soil, decided to try to vault the fence of the Israeli embassy whilst wearing a keffiyeh, and thankfully he was stopped. But his intent was pretty clear. Is that a big weakness for you when it comes to Britain, looking to combat Islamism? Is there fundamentally a problem here with the mass importation of people from parts of the world where Islamism is common?
So, first of all, I want to follow on what he said and I'll respond to you, but it's very important to understand the idea of the Muslim Brotherhood and read the writings of Sayyid Qutb and Hassan al-Banna. It's very, very important. It's imminent because we are not aware the Western weakness that is fundamental because we come with the concepts of liberty. We're unaware of the slight differences between seeing ISIS as an enemy and willing to, for even the Obama administration, to attack and destroy militarily ISIS, but when we see ISIS with a suit, aka Julani or other Muslim Brotherhood around the world, we're messed up and we lose our concept. People who understand that ideas matter can recognize the Muslim Brotherhood ideas as threatening for world liberty, for the Western values we are fighting for. And it's confusing if you are confused. The weakness is what we do. It's the same thing with Hamas, the same thing in the UK. It's the same thing. The weakness enables these people to come in, and the lack of moral clarity to use force against these ideas who want to eliminate us is what enables them to fight and win us.
Wow, fantastic stuff. Very, very strong indeed. And I'll come to you on this, Rob. Just touching on that aspect as well about the idea that having an open border from various different countries where Islamism is rife is probably not a particularly good idea if you want to combat it. And why should we not be afraid of being called Islamophobic? Because that is the fear that a lot of people have, and I understand it. We see people being killed for it. We see people being victims of terror attacks. We see people being cancelled, being hounded out. I mean, I think it's become probably the worst thing you can possibly be called in Britain is an Islamophobe. And how do we convince people that it's okay to actually speak your mind and have genuine concerns about something and voice those opinions without having that fear? How do we win that battle?
How are we having this conversation? Seriously, Patrick. You know, last week when I was in the State Department over the 4th of July, I said I was coming to Britain to speak at CPAC. And everybody laughed and they said, good luck, Rob, because you could end up being arrested over there for actually freely speaking your mind.
Good job, you're a good lawyer.
Well, I can't defend myself, but it's... In that regard, look, I think as Hitchens said it years ago, that the word Islamophobia was introduced in order to chill freedom of speech. And I know actually because I saw last week there was an investigation of a doctor within the United Kingdom because he allegedly adversely spoke about Islam, and this was being done by the NHS. And this was to somebody who wasn't in fact Muslim. Now, you are here in the home, the original home of freedom of speech. The problem is you don't have it enshrined in the Constitution as we would have it, a written Constitution in the same regard. But how can it be that Britain cannot have a conversation about what are our values, what do we stand for, what do we believe in? And you know what? What we're going to do is we want people to come to our country if they're going to contribute to this country, and we want to see who those people contributing are. You see, unfortunately, within the achingly white, woke, liberal mindset, they expected every immigrant realistically to be like the Jew, to come here, to have a prayer for the royal family within the synagogue every week, to work hard, to contribute, and the most they might ask of non-Jewish society or Christian societies to say, look, can I go home early on a Friday and can I have a piece of fishing wire around my area so that I can carry on a Saturday, right? They would never dream of saying, awfully sorry, you can't drink alcohol in our area, because beer is a British right, is a birthright. They would never say, sorry, you can't have a non-kosher butchery in an area. They don't want to change local society because, like when I became an American, I had to say, look, I've never been a communist, I've never been a socialist, I do believe in the Constitution, and I want to live here. Realistically, what Britain has to do is exactly that. They need to say, you want to come here? By all means, come and live here. Come and live by our values. We don't believe in masking women. We don't believe in segregating women. We don't believe in them being second-class citizens. You have to live by our rules.
I think I just couldn't agree more with that, to be perfectly honest. I'm wondering when your show on GB News is going to start. But yeah, we're going to get on to speak specifically about anti-Semitism in a second. But just to round us a little bit off on the kind of Islamism aspect of it, that fear of being called Islamophobic. How do we get people over that? How do we counter that for you?
I mean, obviously, Islamophobia has been a tool and a weapon that has been weaponized by essentially Muslim Brotherhood and Islamists, and to the extent that they have called, I mean, I was once called Islamophobic in a mainstream publication, and I had to get lawyers, and immediately they removed it. I mean, we can't be Islamophobic and Muslim, but that's how sort of mad this sort of weapon has become. And I think the Muslim community, and I think the majority of Muslims are prepared to speak out and say that, you know, you can be critical of Islam like you're critical of Christianity and Judaism and any other religion, and that's, I mean, that's part of living in an open Western society.
Yeah, well, quite. I'll come straight to you actually on the anti-Semitism issue. So, for you, why do you think anti-Semitism has grown recently in Britain, possibly in the West in general, I suppose, in recent years? And straight down the barrel, what do we have to do to combat it?
So anti-Semitism is only a euphemism for people who are against liberty. They find a weak spot of the world who supports liberty, attack them, and then marginalize that, and then their real attack is against the Western world and the concept of liberty. There's a correlation between every anti-Semitic movement in the world in history with people who want tyranny and imperialism. That's a correlation. Now, if you have Jews, as Robert said earlier, if you have Jews who are coming and being part of the nation, people who want to take over, like the Islamists in the US and in the UK and in the US, they are not against the Jews specifically. They're people who are against the Western values, and that's why it's growing. Because the problem in the West in the past 50 years, since post-World War II, the weakness of the West, the decline of the West, and the loss of moral standing of the concepts of liberty enabled the strong Marxist world and obviously the Islamist world that is an imperialism to try to take over. It comes together with the problem with Islamism. You know, there are 22 countries, Arab countries around Israel. How many of them it's legal for Muslim Brotherhood parties to run for their offices? The number is only Qatar and Turkey. But in every other country, these people understand the threat, and they're not Islamophobic because they understand the threat. It's illegal in Egypt for the Muslim Brotherhood. By the way, Obama tried to change that and let them run. But in Jordan, it's illegal. In Saudi Arabia, it's illegal. In the Emirates, it's illegal. It's in India, it's illegal. In Morocco, it's illegal to have Muslim Brotherhood. But only in Israel and in the UK and the US, the Muslim Brotherhood are legal to run for office. It's the weakness of the West that forgot the concepts of liberty. The attack is first of all on Jews, as you said, the canary in the mine, but they will come after you afterwards. There's another book, sorry for name-dropping books here, but Yoram Chazoni's book, The Virtue of Nationalism, is significant and important to read because the alternative for nationalism is not individualism, it's imperialism. And the Islamism, it's an imperialist theological movement that is trying to take over everything we have. We need to recognize that and be strong in what we believe in, be strong in our national identity, UK first, US first, Israel first, and fight against people who want to take what we have. They should have their own countries.
Yeah, oh, yeah, go on.
You are allowed to come in a little bit on that. Look, you and I both come from Manchester sort of area, and when I was, you know, I stand armed guard in my synagogue in Miami, but it was over Yom Kippur that I heard about the stabbing and shooting in, in Manchester, and those people were not alien to me. They were ghosts of my past. People like, Adrian Dolby, I knew who he was, even though I hadn't seen him for 20 years. So it hit home to me. Let's be frank, when I was growing up in Manchester and I wore a kippah on the street, every now and then you'll get some yobbo saying, "Oi, Yid," or something like that, shouting out. But the growth of anti-Semitism in the United Kingdom is directly correlated to the mass migration that you have and the lack of integration. We can't parse those two things apart. The reason why Jews feel unsafe on the streets at the moment in the United Kingdom isn't coming from the Patrick Christys of this world. It's coming, no, seriously, it's coming from somebody whose name is Shahid, whose name is Martyr, who has been named that because a parent didn't want to call their child Violet, or give them a soft name. They wanted to give their child a warlike name.
Bloke who did the Manchester Synagogue and was called Jihad.
Right, exactly so. So that is exactly, and they're telling you very straight out, we are here to commit war, and we are here to colonize your territory as away from you. So that's one way in which you could do it. The other way in which you can do it is actually start educating British people on British values and what you stand for, and looking actually at the Jewish contribution over the last 500 years in the United Kingdom as to what that contribution has been and what we have done together. Like, as I said, don't get me wrong, there's always been undercurrents of anti-Semitism within Britain, but it had that sort of very British way of doing it. When I was in court, I can remember a judge saying to me, "Oh, Mr. Garson, are we going to have one of your Talmudic arguments here?" And I'd say, "Yes, I'm sorry, my lord, you're going to have to think today." And that was kind of how it came across here and there. But it was never overtly violent in the way that it is now, and that violence comes from Islamism. So it's twofold. Number one is education. As a Jesuit said, give me a child until the age of 7 and he's mine for life. So we start educating children young and have mandatory education in every school across the country, and not have siloed schools where they say certain things can't be taught for fear of offending people. This is what British values are. This is what we stand for, akin to like having the Pledge of Allegiance. Start flying your flag and start having some bloody national pride.
And on that as well, there was a school not a million miles away from here where they'd failed, and understandably so when you find out what I'm about to tell you, they'd failed every single Ofsted exam. They lined the children up and made them chant things like "death to Jews" in the playground. Surprisingly, it was where a lot of the sons of the Iranian ambassadors and people like that went. And that was just allowed to operate in London. It's just allowed to operate in London. I mean, that is the definition of weakness. And also, the location of that school, by the way, is right near a very, very prominent well, I was going to say Jewish area. It's not a Jewish area. It's an area where lots of Jewish people live in St. John's Wood as well. So again, that is weakness. Just coming to you on this, Ghanem. One of the things that stood out for me about what Robert said earlier was actually, it's not just about Islamism. There is a problem with anti-Semitism with a lot of these kind of like white socialists, what we might call the kind of blue-haired brigade, maybe. So what do we do about that? These people that like put the keffir on and wear it as this ornament that they have there, because that seems to be where it's coming from. I'm worried about the amount of kind of herbal tea drinking middle-class lefties that there are that live in places like Tunbridge Wells that are massively anti-Semitic. Now, what do we do about that?
I mean, you're absolutely right, and that alliance between Islamists and the left is absolutely baffling, because I mean, Islamists, anything but socialists in the way they, so there's absolutely it doesn't make sense at all. And that either shows the frank stupidity of the leftists who align themselves with the Islamists, or they've got other plans, and that is revolutionary to change the system to ultimately what the Islamists want, which is to overthrow the systems that we have, nation states. They don't believe in nation states. They don't believe in government. They don't believe in the way that things are currently run. And that is the thing that overlaps with Islamists. They want to overthrow the system.
And just on this as well, it got me thinking about, look, after October the 7th, a lot of people revealed themselves, didn't they? I think the country changed, arguably the world changed there, but I can never get my head around the whole trans for Gaza thing. I did Douglas Murray, I think, called it, was it chickens for KFC, I think, is what he called it. But you also get a lot with a lot of kind of so-called feminists as well. What is going on with the psychology of these people that are either pro-Hamas or massively anti-Semitic, who seem to support various groups that hate gay people, treat women like second or third class citizens? What do we do about that? And where does that come from? Is that a teaching in school? What is it?
So Tom Cotton, the senator, always starts his conversations with German philosophy. So unfortunately, to answer the question, we have to go a little bit to philosophy and understand the moral assumptions of Marxism. The Marxist moral assumption is that the weak is the just. And if that is how you think about the world, it's immoral to be successful. It's immoral to be economically successful or militarily successful, and the only justification for getting anything is because you're weak. That's the Marxist premise. And the Western world, unfortunately, because of German philosophy from the Frankfurt School that moved to the US in the 1930s and took over the entire international universities, that's the way they think about good and bad. They think that if you're weak, you're right. And then it's like the identity politics, that it's like a battle to who's the weakest and the lowest level in society. And because you're so low, you demand all your entitlements. It's the same thing in local domestic issues, and it's worse so in international affairs. If the poor countries are just and they're right, and the countries, the successful ones, America, the UK, Israel, and many others, they have to apologize for the success, and they have to give everything to the people who are losing the war because they started it, because they're bad, because they don't believe in liberty and free markets and innovation and anything else. So they're entitled to win the war. And these poor people, the lefties, the blue hair, next generation, Gen Z people, would have no real concept about liberty and morality. That is like the people who are succeed, the meritocratic society, that if you work hard and you try to do your life, live your life with a family, with a business, and create actually good for the world, that is the values we believe in, that are the values that we believe in. And they prefer the Marxist values. In international affairs, they want you to lose. They don't believe in your right to fight for your country. That's where it comes from, the Marxist agenda. Now, if you're an individual with blue hair, have no family, you're fighting with your parents because they're millennials or because they're boomers, and you hate their politics, and you live in your campus listening to all these professors who are brainwashing you, and you have nothing in your life, you need to believe in something. And that Marxist agenda, together with the social fabric, is destroying the West.
There's another thing, as a non-Jew myself, I have never been able to ignore that as I walk around, there's a synagogue right near where I live, why do they have to have security outside it all the time? Why is it that there has to be security outside Jewish schools? Why is it? I'll never forget the morning of the Manchester synagogue attack. There were members of the Jewish community who were on their way to synagogue, and they didn't know about it because they hadn't been on the phones. Now, I knew about it, and the first they found out about it was police cars swarming towards their synagogue, and that's when they thought, okay, something's happened. And I cannot understand, I don't need a police escort to go to church. I don't know any Hindus or Sikhs that need a police escort to go to church. I certainly don't know, apart from when there's maybe been the odd minor flashpoint in a way. I don't know many Muslims who have to have a police presence outside their mosques. And for me, I can't understand why people don't figure out that there's clearly something terribly wrong that's going on in society there. Robert, I'd like to just round off with something else that really stood out to me about what you said, which was about how one of the best ways to combat Islamism and to fight anti-Semitism is to stand up for British values. And increasingly, a lot of people find it quite hard to define what British values are. So, what are these British values that are going to cure us from Islamism and from anti-Semitism?
What were they or what are they? Because if I were to ask you, what are they today? I don't know what they are today. But we hearken back and we look at backbone. We look at God. We look at country. We look at those people that were innovative and successful for those are the same sort of people that developed the bouncing bomb, that, you know, joined the war, that those people that had that singular mentality to be able to stand up against a tyranny and say, even though the rest of Europe is collapsing, we are that smallest country within that environment, and we're going to stand up and say, absolutely not. It needs to come back to a concept of Britain being successful. One of the things that annoys me, and I'll say this very briefly, Americans, when they look at me and they speak to me, they say, you came here, you did well, well done, you worked hard. British people said, oh, you've been very lucky, haven't you? What Britain needs to do is to get back to the drawing board. You need to rip stuff up. You need to really doge the current deep state that you've got within the civil service and start again. Go back to Magna Carta, go back to God, go back to community, and say, let's redefine ourselves as to what we should be and where we want to be.
Well, on that note, I'm aware that the clock is now flashing red in front of me, and I don't want them to start playing us off with Oscars-style music. So I would just like to say thank you very, very much to everyone who has attended this. Thank you very much to the organisers of this wonderful event. It's the first one proper in this country. It's going to grow and grow and grow. And thank you to our wonderful panel here. Just give them a big round of applause. Thank you very much, everyone.